Well, welcome to episode 1 of People's Cardboard, a podcast about sports cards and sports cards collecting. I'm your host, Seth LaRue. You can find me on YouTube and Instagram at Soccer Card Corner. The goals of this podcast are simple: share valuable information and learnings about sports card collecting, make connections with and share insights from other collectors. No BS, no drama, just good vibes. Today I'm excited to welcome James, also known as at MadCityCollector on Instagram. In our conversation, we talk about the recent sale of more than 50 2017 Topps Chrome UEFA Red Refractors numbered to 10. James's history collecting the Red Refractor set, his experience, perspectives, and insights on the recent once-in-a-generation auction that happened this past week, and how he plans to approach the Red Refractor set chase going forward. This was a really fun conversation. I hope you enjoy it. All right, today we have, I think, a very, at least for me, very exciting guest and very exciting topic. We have James. He goes by MadCityCollector on Instagram. And today we're going to be talking about probably once in a, I don't want to say once in a lifetime, but like a once in a generation liquidation of one of the most sought after parallels of one of the most sought after soccer card sets in existence. So James, welcome to the channel. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I even contacted you preemptively because I was like, after this auction, it was just like so much energy flowing. I was like, I need to debrief on this. I need to go through what happened because it was such a whirlwind as it was going on, and we were kind of messaging the whole way through it, just what was going on and trying to wrap our heads around what was happening. So this is great to sit down and go through it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever looked forward to a sports card auction that I wasn't necessarily like actively participating in, especially, and we'll get into the details, but like especially the second night where it was like, okay, the first night happened and now there's like more to come. Just like, what's that going to look like? And yeah.
And the second night we had a little more, cards that we knew we were going to go for a little bit higher. The first night it was just, it was kind of the appetizer to the second night in my mind.
Yeah. So I think like we'll dive into the nitty gritty and kind of set the stage for any of the listeners who maybe weren't as immersed in it as you and I were. But I think just at a high level, you've been on Soccer Studies podcast, you've been on the Carlson Cards podcast. So I think in terms of like somebody wanting to get like a background of you as like a collector and maybe a deeper dive into like your 2017 Chrome Gold chase, I would definitely direct them to those two. I thought both those shows were awesome and highly enjoyable. So for the sake of, I guess, our focus today, we'll focus on the mass sale of 2017 Chrome Red. And so others can kind of get caught up through those shows, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I won't. The rest of my collecting, not probably worth going into for the scope of what we're talking about. But yeah, we can go into the background, I guess, of what the red set, and how this happened, how I got to this point.
Yeah. I think that's a great segue because I think people who probably saw you on those podcasts, they probably know you as like the 2017 Chrome Gold guy, or people that follow you on Instagram. And so I think like it'd be easy to understand or sort of guess like, oh, why would you want to collect like the red? But maybe like in your own words, it'd be helpful to kind of walk through your thought process going from like gold and then how red entered the picture.
Yeah. And so, to be honest, like the story of these cards and the collector who sold them kind of fits into my story in terms of like collecting it. So I think it all kind of tie together. So I think as I talked about the other podcasts, I kind of got in late 2020 is when I really started kind of diving into soccer collecting. To be honest, I didn't even know soccer cards existed until then. But around that time, I just was following, as many soccer collectors as I could. And I remember stumbling upon, Super Trout 27, because it was all of a sudden started posting just absolute, just monster stuff. Like, 2014 gold Messi's, 2014 gold Ronaldo's, 2018 gold Mbappe's, and just, he was a super collector. His name Super Trout. He was a super collector of trout before all this. And just looking back through his like timeline on his page, I think he flipped over to soccer in early 2020. And so I just followed him, and then at some point, I think it was like early, like 2021, or actually maybe like late 20, maybe I think it was late 2021, early 2022. All of a sudden, he started posting lives. His name's Court Gabo. If people don't like the Instagram monikers, but he was all of a sudden starting ripping cases of 2017 Chrome, and I was like, what? I was like, what madness is this? Like, because these cases at the time are going anywhere between, I think 15 was the lowest I ever saw them go, but like I think they went as high as 30K per case, and he was ripping these. I think at the time he was chasing the 2017 red Mbappe specifically. But I think during the course of ripping all these cases, he started accumulating all these reds, and he started started advertising he was collecting the set, and everyone's like, this is so cool. I thought it was so cool. I was kind of struggling for ways to collect different things, and I was like, oh, set collecting 2017 Chrome would be really cool. That's kind of how I got down to my goal pathway. I was like, I can't compete against this guy who's ripping cases of 2017 Chrome trying to collect the red set. So I was like, the feasibility of the gold at the time seemed more, and I was like, red's like just kind of out of my league. I felt like at that point, fast forward, he kept posting, collecting, more and more of those things. And fast forward to, I think it was this summer. Like I kind of noticed that he was conspicuously quiet in terms of his collecting of the reds. And I was like, if he's not really collecting more, I'll maybe pick one up here, there, like, if they pop up. They still rarely ever showed up. So it's like, collecting them in any sort of number seemed just crazy. But then he specifically posted, so this kind of the origin of me being like, wait a minute, maybe I could collect. I think it was like the end of August, like early September, he posted a first edition Harry Potter
I saw
book.
that. Yeah.
I'm kind of bored with soccer card collecting. I'm trying a new pathway. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, so what is he going to do about this red set? Because you can't be half in on like collecting soccer cards and trying to collect the set. And then I think there was a second post where he posted a record where he's like, I'm done with card collecting. And I was like, huh, like he's collecting these expensive records, like first edition books. I was like, I had a feeling that, he might part ways with these cards at some point. And then I noticed some of his other high-end cards started being put up for auction. And I was like, these reds, he's going to sell these at some point. I didn't know how he was going to do it. I didn't know he was going to release them slowly. And then, fast forward to, I guess, like 2 weeks ago now, all of a sudden, you see, I think it was 25 of them were posted in one night. And we're just like, you and I think chatted about it. Other people were messaging me about it just because I knew I liked the, the set, and, it kind of brings us to our point in time now. But I don't know how much of this you were aware of or got an inkling of, but I kind of, late August, early September, I was like, this seems like this may be an inevitability. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely was, I guess, slightly aware of it just because I remember all the posts, all the red posts. The Instagram live where he actually pulls the Mbappe is one of the most insane things I've ever seen in my life too, because the way that he opened the boxes, he just like takes a box, opens every pack and like stacks them up so he can like sift through them. And then he goes like pick up the pile and the bottom card of the last pack just falls on the table and it's the red Mbappe. It's one of the most insane things I've ever seen, especially given that that's what he was chasing. Yeah. Right. But then I saw the Harry Potter book, which I thought was like super cool. And then I started seeing the albums and it was like, okay, this is definitely happening. Even before that though, I do want to just double click on, you have like before any of these came up, you had, I don't know, I want to guess somewhere between like 5 and 10 reds that you've been picking up sort of just like over the years, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I had, about 10, 10 or 10 or 11. I think out before all these, I think I had, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think I had bought 13 before this auction even started. But yeah, I think before the auctions popped up, I think 10 is exactly right, because there were a couple that had been sitting on eBay for a while that I was just like, now that these have popped up, people are going to start noticing these reds sitting around and they're just going to start buying them. So I just, even though they were just been sitting there kind of bins that people weren't interested in, I was like, I think these are going to sell, as soon as reds get attention from this auction. So I bend those real quick. But so that's how I got up to 13. But
Nice.
But yeah, so it was I had when things had kind of gotten quiet and people reds had been really conspicuously quiet for since the summer of last year. I mean, only maybe 10 or 15 had even come up for auction of any of the reds, and so it was like they're pretty rare. Like maybe like 1 or 2 a month is all like you'll ever see of these even popping up. But they've I think a little bit gaining momentum. As things kind of slowed down, people just looking for more liquidity for whatever reason, whether it's to buy more cards or just life, and so they needed money type of thing. So I guess you never know exactly why people sell cards, but
that's a good point though, because I mean, the reds that the limited amount of reds that I have, at least before this, the red I have, I should say, before any of this, I mean, that was all that card's been sold a couple times and it's never been sold publicly, and I think that's what happens with a lot of these higher end parallels. They don't sell like on eBay, right? Like it's very rare that they would sell on eBay. You find something on Instagram, you negotiate a deal, or you go to a show like the National or something. So not only the fact that like they don't really come up in general, but then all of a sudden this many are coming up to auction at the same time is like, it's just like I'm trying to put in context for people who are listening. It's like, oh, what's the big deal? Like a bunch of parallels came up for auction. It's like, no, this is like, this many wouldn't have come up for auction in like years, and then they all came up for auction on basically the same day.
Right. I mean, most of these reds have never. There's no public sale in Card Ladder for most of these. I mean, so it's that like for when you see that you're like, this is there are 10 of them, so they're out there, but I think as I've people talk about like a lot of these are ripped in Asia, there's a ton of them in like Europe and who knows where. I mean, they're really all over the world. So it's like I think you and I we've gotten on Card Hobby and like are starting to see like, oh, there's some stuff over in China that is making its way there. So we have another kind of portal to a space where these are, because before a lot of the Chinese collectors who have these, if they really wanted eyes on these, they'd have to send them to eBay, and that for them, I think that's pretty cumbersome. So, but so I, more trickling through, but yeah, like you said, it's these almost no public sales of these for a lot of these. So
yeah, and I think so. Then if my math is correct, I want to say it was like 52.
Was it? Okay.
Is that the number 52? Somewhere around 50.
That sounds right. That sounds right.
Somewhere around 50 of these came up. 50 of like each, different players. It's a 99 card set. So we're talking like half of the set coming up for auction.
Yeah.
Just basically, instantly. I was trying to think of an analogy for like another sport or like another sports card set. Like would this be kind of like, like I know Austin Carlson Cards does the select gold set. Would this be like 50 of those coming up or like 70 of those coming up at once?
Yeah, Austin messaged me about it, and I said, "This is kind of like 2012 Gold Prism."
Just exactly.
50 show half of the set, or 50 showing up at one time. I mean that because they're both out of 10. It's both the first set of of a kind of an iconic set that pops up. I mean, obviously there are more collectors who are interested in I think in basketball and football probably than there are soccer right now. So, I mean, so they would go for more, I think, but for us, in our small slice of the hobby, this is exciting to us as 2012 gold, 50 of them showing up would be to like, say, a basketball or football collector. I don't know of anything analogous necessarily in baseball.
Yeah. So all these red refractors at eBay, we're like, okay, it's happening. We're messaging. It's like, okay, there's 20 something of them ending. And then like the other 20, whatever get listed, ending a few days later. Like what goes through your mind just in terms of like, I mean, obviously this is like, okay, we talked about how you started considering like maybe this was a possibility. maybe I don't want to speak for you, but maybe you thought they wouldn't all come on the same day. Like you'd have a chance to sort of like keep them up more periodically.
I was kind of hoping that way because I just taking a big chunk of it's a fair amount of money just to outlay at one point, and it's like just having it come over is a little more. I don't know. In some way, I guess in some ways, it's better if just from a financial standpoint, just to do it slowly. Not having to pay a ton at the same time. But then at the same time, I was like, if they all come at the same time, that could also be a unique opportunity. So I set money aside so that I wouldn't be like stretching, getting the running the bank account to zero. So being a unique opportunity. So maybe everyone else would be stretched then too. So then I could probably pick up some of these at a decent deal that maybe they would have gone for more if it was the only card up for auction type of thing. So so I was prepared for this potentiality. So, and I think ultimately it worked out okay, probably. In terms of thinking about it, but when it did happen, what I did is I just took the whole list of cards available and took what knowledge I had of like previous sales and kind of wrote down like what I was willing to like kind of go for them, like kind of at a max. I wasn't necessarily going to go to my max on all these, but I was like, if I really am going to go after this card, this is like what I think I'll have to bid. And then I kind of went back and was like, which of these do I actually want? Do I want to put, a serious bid on that I think is, has a, more likely than not chance of actually winning the auction. So that was kind of my thinking on these. And so when I went, when the auction actually happened, it was interesting to see how that played out in terms of like which bids, like ended up working out, which didn't. And there's some that I bid that I thought were going to work out that didn't work out. So it was kind of an interesting. That was the most interesting part of it for me.
Got it. So it sounds like you had estimated values, or at least like estimate almost like tiers of like, this is how high I'll go for this card, and then this one maybe not as high, but I still think this is like a decent comp. Because that was the other thing I wanted to ask is like, how do you comp these, right? Because like there's no sales of these cards. There's obviously potentially sales of other parallels, but the more rare you get in parallel, the more murky it becomes, because it's not as simple as just being like, oh, this is half as rare as this other one, so it's twice as much money, or anything like that.
So this is getting into kind of the more the art of collecting rather than like with all the data tools we have now, everyone's like comp this, comp that, like I'll be at the comps. But if you're collecting something and you need to get it, you don't want to go too crazy, but at the same time you're like, I'm willing to go this strong to get it. And that's almost up to like how much you desire the card. Like, am I like how far can you extend yourself based off your resources, based off how much you value the card as a collector? So it really is. There is that art aspect to it. But like you said, I took my knowledge of what I paid for things in the past. The comps that were available. I'm like, it's like this went to this at this point. So I probably there's a decent chance it'll go close to this again, or like, this player's market's really kind of fallen down. So I think it may not be as much type of thing, but a lot of it played out like I thought it would. Some of it didn't play out like I thought it would. So that was what was so fascinating to me.
Nice.
But
I guess before we dive into like some of the details, because I know you have some notes on just like prices, and I think there are definitely things that, as you alluded to, were went for higher than we probably thought, went for lower. I guess like just going into it, like given the history, given your set collecting, given like the prep you did, I mean, obviously like the answer to this is probably like ideally you get every single one of them, but like realistically, like going into it, like what was your goal in terms of like, okay, if this happens, like I'll consider this successful, or I'll be happy if X happens.
I think if I'd gotten fewer than 20, I think I would have been disappointed. But I thought realistically there were enough of the ones that were players that weren't, kind of the desirable ilk that I would, end up with more than 20. But yeah, I wasn't 100% yet sure. I don't know of any other red, now that Court no longer is collecting it, I don't know of anyone who's actually collecting the set. So the non-top players are, like not as desirable to people who aren't collecting a set. You know what I'm saying? So I realized I was, kind of competing against the player collectors and team collectors, is it probably, and there may be a smattering of people like, oh, I'd like a red, and they just randomly want to buy one or something like that. But so yeah, I mean, given the number of like players who weren't like kind of the most desirable, like I thought 20 was kind of minimum what I was gonna go for, not be disappointed. So that was kind of my thought process. I didn't think I would get more than 30, just seeing the quality of the players, especially in the like the second night of the auction. I was like, some of these are going to go like higher than I'm, or someone's going to just go higher than me. And so I was kind of right. And I think of the number of the cards that were in the auction, I think there was maybe 45 that realistically I didn't have. So like there was like 5 or 6 that I had already had that he was put into auction. So I knew I wasn't going to get those.
Got it.
So that, it was pretty ambitious. Like I if things went too crazy, I was like, I could only end up with like 10 or 15, but realistically 20.
Nice. I guess maybe just jumping in then to like what happened in some of the auctions. I'll kind of start and then we can take this wherever, but my observation, or one of the things I noticed just as somebody who tracks these cards and is collecting the gold set as well, you kind of get a sense of like which players, maybe not even which players you value like higher than others, but just like which players go for like what levels versus others. I think even that being said, there were definitely still some surprises for me. The number one is the Baz Dost one that I think went for like almost $300 out of nowhere.
That was just an interesting one, because that was, let's see, to start off the auction, like things were going according to plan for me, because I was like, it was, I think, who was it? Scott Sinclair, 70, like that was 73. Like, I was like, oh, that's very fair. If these all go for 73, I'm going to be going home happy. The Aubameyang, I think, I went on a streak, to be honest, at the start. Like I was getting almost all the ones. Like that was like 173. So that
I was looking at that Aubameyang sale last night, like prepping for this, and I was shocked how low that went.
Yeah. So those two, I was like, those are on the low end. So I was like feeling good. The one where I started to be like, oh, people were realizing that somewhat, they're gonna have to bid stronger to win these, was the 8.5 like Dzeko, which was the third one. That went for almost 293. So that went for almost 300. So I was like, that 8.5, like Dzeko, I was like, I know they're Roma collector. So I was like, maybe the Roma collector, went in for this, same. And then the 9 Galan, another very popular Roma one, that one, 206. Again, that's fairly reasonable. Like, that's like 200's about what like the random players typically go. But, with the Roma collectors out there, I thought it was pretty popular. The one that like started going a little bit higher, I knew it was going to go a little bit higher, so I bid pretty strong on this one, was the Dybala. And that one went close to 900, and he's a pretty popular player amongst fans of Juventus, and so I knew he's a very popular player just in general. And then let's see, then I think that what was it? So then there was, go quickly through it, Patrick Roberts. That one was not too bad. Like that was like 133. So like that, for a no-name guy. Casillas, legendary player. He went probably a little low. I thought he might go for a little bit higher, but I think he went for 880. And interestingly, there's another PSA 10 up now that's for auction for anyone who wants to go in for that. But that's it. So it's just weird that 2 of these came up for sale so soon. But that was still reasonable. Salvio, another reasonable one, 150. And then we're getting to Dost here. And then Varela went high. This is where I started to get a little bit worried. This one went up to 225. I didn't think a Bruno Varela would go that high. And so everything going to plan. I think got all the ones that I was going for at the beginning, but then Bastos came up. And I was like, PSA 9, you know, a soccer fan. I had never heard of Bastos before I started collecting this collection, and I think he went for, what did he end up going for? It was like 260, and it was like I think it was a tag 9, and I was like, I thought no way that this would go up that high, and I was like, I don't know who. It was interesting to me. I was like, who outbid me for this? Like, is there a Bastos collector? Is there someone who's just like sees that there's some lunatic like me like going after these? So he's like, I want one of these, and I'm just gonna bid strong. So that was an interesting one, and we chatted about that. I was like, of my run, like it got broken up by Bastos of all people. Like, I thought someone might beat me on Casillas or Dybala, but it was Bastos. So that was kind of interesting.
I think I mentioned to you that actually makes the story better, because that's who it was that actually
who kind of broke my streak. I was like, I thought I was gonna get Bastos for like $100 or something. So that was a funny one. But and then some of the other ones, the ones I didn't bid on seemed to go for a little bit lower. So I was like, I was definitely like kind of pushing the values up as I was bidding. I guess I was being the aggressive bidder that were helping those. So some of them went for not too bad, I think, and the ones I didn't go for. And then I'm trying to think. I think Kadira was another one that came up. That one, he's like a sneaky, like really awesome player, like for being a World Cup champion and like played for Real Madrid, Juventus for a while. Like he went for. That was what was so funny to me. Bastos went for 260, and Sami Khedira went for like 290. I was just like, sometimes those things don't make sense to me. But then then a lot of the other random ones, like I picked up like Navas. Let's see, McGregor didn't go too bad. Like, I mean, these were all like went for reasonable prices. And then I think we got to like the one that's like kind of interesting to both of us, that because you're a Liverpool fan, was the Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think his last PSA 9 sale, I remember, I think it was 4,000, and
wow.
which is kind of, I think it was like last summer. So I was like, I don't know, has his market gone down? Like, because of the desirability of the set, could this go for more? Realistically, I thought it would go for less, because like he's still good, but like, as these prospects kind of age, he was kind of on the bench for England during the World Cup and stuff like that. That I was like, maybe the shine has worn off. So maybe I was like, oh, maybe I could get this for, much less than the 4,000. But I think ultimately I have it. What was it, 4,250? As I think what it went for. And this was a tag 8.5. So yeah. Definitely less than like a PSA 9. The PSA 9 in terms of desirability for most collectors. But I don't know, as a Liverpool fan, what do you think about like a TAA going for
I mean, yeah, I think you're right. I think part of it is just we had talked about just like the Liverpool premium and there being just like so many Liverpool fans. I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is like there's an aesthetic aspect of like the red on red that probably gives it like a little bit of like, I don't know, something. Technically it's considered like his rookie, so like that's another thing. So I think it's just this confluence of things where it's like, okay, all together, it's not shocking. I think what was shocking to me is, I mean, it definitely went higher than I thought it was going to go, especially given it was a tag 8.5. But what was shocking to me is it was at like 3,000 like days before.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't even like, oh, you would get a bid in and see how it's like, no, somebody's just like, people are just like flexing, just like, no, I'm bidding this up. I want this card.
Yeah,
which I always think it's funny when people do, but
because I mean, we haven't really talked about that. I mean, that's like everyone has their own like style or strategies when it comes to eBay bidding. Like, I think most people, though, like a large number of people, to protect against the shill, they save their bids until the last 10 to 15 seconds of the auction. But this one, that people were just like signaling, like, if you think you're going to get this cheap, like, look elsewhere type of thing. And so they were kind of trying to, I think, just fend off interest almost. But yeah, I think sometimes that works. Sometimes people are like, oh, there's so many strong bidders, I think I'm just going to stay away or something.
Yeah, that's true.
But it was interesting that it went so high so quickly. It was one of the few ones that went up high, before the very end of the auction type of thing. So, and That being said, well, I guess we'll get into this a little bit later, but like just I don't think there were any like real, low feedback bidders in on this one. I think it was mostly,
No.
it seemed, people who had eBay experience type of thing. So
yeah, the first round. So yeah, I guess like I know we kind of talked about this, but it was like all the tag slabs came to auction on like Sunday. Was it Sunday night?
Sunday night, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think all the PSA ones were ending on Wednesday night, so like a few days later.
Right.
And so it was like, oh, this is cool. Like all these cards, and as you mentioned, like you were fortunate enough to get a number of them, and yeah, everything seemed pretty much like above board, other than like the Dost and the Trent Alexander-Arnold, which was just I think for various reasons went like way high. So it was like, oh man, like what's it gonna look like on Wednesday because that was the other thing is the PSA slabs had more of what you would probably consider like the notable players.
Right.
Whereas I would say the tag slabs, there was like maybe more of like the random guys. So I think it was kind of, I mean, I was personally excited to be like, what's this going to look like? Like what's going to happen given what we just saw like a few days before. I guess as somebody who was like in on it and like bidding, were there any like specific differences? I mean, you mentioned kind of the zero feedback, but like any other, like what was your experience on like the Wednesday night bidding on the second round versus that first round?
I guess it's a little hard to. People were saving their bids till the. Well, I mean it was both nights. People were saving their bids to the end. Definitely. I guess the second night there were, so like the ones I thought like the nice cards I thought I might get outbid on were like Dybala and like Casillas, like I mentioned. Those weren't like cheap prices, but I thought they were like fair prices, and definitely they were, a good bit below like what my top, bid that I put in was. And so, I kind of had the same strategy both nights. And so, it was just interesting to me the second night, these bids that I thought were pretty strong, had a good chance of winning, just were getting outbid. So that's probably the only thing that I noticed. And I guess because they were nicer cards they were the PSA slabs and slightly, more desirable players, I guess that shouldn't really surprise me, but I'd adjusted my price point kind of with that in mind. So it was interesting. It's like for the nicer ones, there did seem to be, there was more just like enthusiasm over what kind of in the past I thought the prices would be type of thing. So.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you too, that you just reminded me of, we talked about how the first like 5 or 6 were going as planned. Then there was like the dose went for higher, others went for lower. Like as that was happening in real time, like you had done this prep, was that changing like how you comped? Like if you had a $300 bid allocated for one guy and then dose goes for 260, like are you ticking that $300 bid up? Or are you staying true to like your research? Or like how did that impact?
I will say, I sound somewhat logical in here, but I'm not necessarily a logical collector. So the FOMO kind of kicked in. I was like, oh my God, is someone going to start outbidding me for these? And so I increased my kind of what my maxes were on some of the no-name players. I was like, I'm not gonna mess around. Like, I'm willing to pay a little bit more for, considering I had gotten a bunch for kind of a reasonable price. I was like, if I have to pay a little extra for the last few, I was like, I want to get these because like we said in the past, like these almost have no public sale. So my FOMO, my irrational collector kind of mentality did kick in there toward the end, which I think maybe what you're getting at. My strategy changed, not necessarily a logical strategy, but I did start bidding more to make sure I acquired some of these after the dose, because I was like, I'm not gonna, my competitiveness, the FOMO, whatever you want to call it, kicked in a little bit.
Well, it's just interesting because like if you take imagine a world where like these are coming up one per week, right? And you lose the dose one week and then the next week you can kind of like reset, right? But this is happening like minutes apart, right? So it's like, you have to it's like, even if you are being logical, you have to make like very quick decisions around like, okay, if I don't make an adjustment in 5 minutes, I might never see this card ever again.
Yeah, I may not see the dose for 5 years from now, or I may see it next week. It's just it is very random like when they'll show up. So yeah, so that was my that's why I was like just do it. Like I just make sure you put. So I put really strong bids in after the dose just to kind of make sure. I didn't put a bid in for the TAA because I was, it already got past the point where I thought it was. But for most of the other ones that I needed, I put in a bid for. I think there was one I just completely missed because I think it was like the turnaround time between the auctions. I didn't realize how quick it was. I just completely missed even to bid on it. But, outside of that, those three, I think I bid and won on all the ones that I was actually bid strongly on. So
nice. One thing that people started messaging like me about or like commenting on posts I had was that people were convinced that these were being shilled, like specifically the Luka Modric. I just checked and it was paid. So
you confirmed that like you have like a mechanism to confirm that it was paid?
Well, I just assume that it doesn't. Well, I assume it doesn't. Does it show up on Card Ladder if it's not paid?
I don't know. I have seen cards that I thought were not paid, but they generally get taken down. Andre, there's Terapeak. Is that?
Yeah, I was just gonna check Terapeak as well.
Andre said it was on Terapeak, so like I don't know much about Terapeak. I don't use it, but it sounds like with that means that if it's in those analytics, that means
because Terapeak is run by eBay, so like they put stuff on there. Yeah, it's on here. So it's if it's on there, it means it was paid.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So we can go. Yeah, we can fast forward. But the first night, like I said, I got most of the ones I wanted. So like fast forward the second night, I was like, that was strategically that was tougher for me because I knew I wasn't going to get all these, and so like I said, I had kind of what I knew I would have to bid to get a lot of these, but I didn't go to that for like I kind of prioritized like a few of them. I was like, there's a few I'll dig deep for, and the others I'll put in what I think is a reasonable bid, but knowing that I may get beaten. So that being said, the very first one. Who was it? I think the very first one that came up that night was Aguero. Or no, actually, Iniesta. The auto went up, but I'm not collecting the auto set, so I wasn't going to bid on that one, even though I do like Iniesta. I already have the the non-auto red, so I was like, I don't need, I don't collect the autos, so I was going to save the funds for something else. So the first non-auto that came up was the Aguero, and that one was one where I was like, that opened it. It was the very first one, and it opened my eyes because I thought it would realistically go between 1,000 and 1,200, and then I think it ended up going for 1,525. And so I'm like, I was like, people are bidding seriously on these, and definitely opened my eye. And I'm trying to think, and whether any of I can't remember if what the feedback was on the bidder who won that one, but I think that one was like seemed like a reasonable. I was like, this person just maybe is a Man City fan or something, and just put in a really strong bid. I was the underbidder for it, so just showing how strong I went for it because I did want that one. I thought I was going to win it too, but and so after not getting that one, I adjusted and strengthened my bid for maybe a couple other ones because I thought I was going to get that one. But anyway, so Bale was an interesting one because a PSA 10 had sold for 1025, I think like a week before. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't bid on the 10 thinking I was going to get this one. Oh, I'll get this one for less than that one. I don't really care. I want a PSA 9. And this one went for 1025 too. So the guy who bought it actually messaged me. He's like, I can't believe the 9 went for the same as the 10. Because he had the exact same thought process I did. He skipped bidding on the 10 thinking he'd get the 9 for cheaper. And so it was like, we both outthought ourselves on this one. We both should have, maybe gone after the 10 or something. but that was an interesting one. That was an interesting one from that standpoint. It just shows kind of like the logic behind these. Sometimes it's not logical what happens with these. It just depends on strategies that people come up with.
Yeah.
Buffon was an interesting one too, because I had bought a Buffon for a little over 900 or in the 900s, like a couple months ago. And the Buffon went for 2,000. And that was like, I didn't bid on this one because I already had it. And that was an eye opener because I was like, whatever comps I thought were out there, I was like, maybe they're getting blown out of the water. So that was an eye opener, even though I didn't even bid on it, because I was like, people aren't messing around. So I was a little bit in panic mode at this point. I was like, I'm going to have to come in strong with the ones that I really want to go for. So the Cavani was the next one. That went for a little bit higher. This is when the shenanigans, in my mind, started happening to a certain extent. I don't know if the Buffon was. I don't remember what the bidder profile was on that one, but that one was one where like that went strangely high compared to the last Buffon one. So that kind of on my radar. So
and that one I can confirm just on the Buffon, that one is not in Terapeak yet, which means
maybe it's not paid for.
Potentially not paid for.
I think,
anyway, sorry.
I think maybe it had that was the first one that had some 0 and 1 feedback bidders where you're just like, that went double what the last one went for just very recently. So
the Cavani did get paid, the $1,000 Cavani.
Yeah, that's because I bought that one.
Oh, that was yours. Good. Well, then good. I'm glad to see you're settling it out. Good.
It went higher than I thought.
Gotcha.
Well, the thing was that the bidder, we both put in identical $1,000 bids, and for whatever reason, maybe I put my $1,000 bid in first. I don't know how that works.
Yeah. I think so.
I think it's who puts it in first. I think gets
it.
But that was a 0 feedback bidder who bid to 1,000.
Wow.
And so and it went for a little higher than I thought, but like with things going higher than I thought, I was like, I guess I mean, Cavani's, he's a good player, so I didn't mind paying a decent price for him, but I thought I would get him for more in the 700 to 800 range, maybe.
Yeah.
Or 6 or 7, 800. But anyway, like this is like you said, when we're seeing these, like, I don't know, zero feedback, like, in real time. That's what was so like what is happening? Like, are these being shilled? Like,
yeah.
I mean, we kind of get into that, I guess, at this point. Or I guess we can go some of the other ones. I'm trying to remember. So there was Aguero, Buffon, Al-Shawari was another one. He was like a random guy who went for higher than I thought. El Yunusi kind of went for a decent. Went for kind of what I thought was a decent price. Fabinho was like in the 600 to 700 range. He's not in a Liverpool kit, so if he'd been a Liverpool kit, I bet he would have gone higher. But he's a full Liverpool player, so he does typically have some decently strong sales.
Yeah, I think that's another one where that's considered like a quote unquote rookie as well. So
for Fabinho?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, even though he's older, it's like one of those weird ones where it's like he's not in any sets, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then the Gutsa, I think that was the one you got. The Gutsa. Did you get the Gutsa, or is that?
Yeah, somehow for less than the Dost.
Well, yeah, that was just wow. I mean, I already have it, so I didn't bid on it. And yeah, the amount you got it for is about what I got the Raw for a while back. So it was like a pretty on par with how
things were. That was one where it was like that was one of the few where it wasn't being bid up. It was like it was like less than $100 with like 30 seconds left. I'm like, okay, I'm bidding on this. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh my God, do I need to bid on this? I was like, no. It's like, I don't need to be spending money for stuff I already have, type of thing.
I think I even looked at the raw price, or I looked at like some comp where it was like, okay, if I can get this for like around that or near that, given that it like probably won't come up again, I'm going to do it. And then of course, like a PSA 10 gets listed like 2 days later.
Oh, is that one of the? Oh, that is one of the ones that's up there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll see what it goes for. The PSA 10 may have just the PSA 10 premium. Who knows? Or it may go less. Like I said, sometimes the logic goes out the window.
Yeah.
And then so this is at this point I got to the first one that I really wanted was the Griezmann red PSA 10, like color match. Griezmann is like he's a player I think is really awesome to collect, and was it 314 cards, and I chat every once in a while. He's a big Griezmann guy, and I was like, I'm going to win this in honor of you because he said he wasn't going to bid on it, and so I put in a bid substantially higher than it ended up going for. So it went for 1186, which is a strong price, but like Griezmann for me is like, he was like the best French player in the 2018 World Cup, and like he's just like a really he's just a really awesome player. So I was really happy to get that one for much less than I was willing to go for it. His auto went for more than his non-auto, which was interesting, but I guess some people like auto, so I didn't. Hummels didn't go for too much. Hazard PSA 9 was a pretty strong sale. Jimerson not too bad. Gabriel Jesus, that went for pretty strong. Like I think it was like 1259. I bid on it pretty strong, but it's again, that's another one that's a rookie. So yeah, here's where it started getting a little interesting. With the shill stuff again, was the Lewandowski. PSA 8. This exact card sold on PWCC. I think it may have been 2 years ago for 4,000. And so that was one of the only comps that was out there, for the red set for a while. And so I was like, this was going to be an interesting one for me. Like, at 4,000, whether it was going to go that high again. Because I don't know if Court bought it for 4,000 because it is the exact same card.
Mm-hmm.
So this was going to be this was an interesting one for me because there was a comp of the exact same card like 2 years ago, and I was like, I don't know, Lewandowski's a good player, but like compared to compared to some of these guys, Griezmann and things like that, I wasn't sure. Is he really that much more collectible than those guys? I think maybe he is, but it ended up going for 3,000. But there's some sketchy bids.
That one also got paid though. I did just check that. So it's weird because it's all the ones that we thought were sketchy got paid, which is, I mean, who knows? Like that doesn't necessarily mean everything was above board, right? So, it just means whoever won it was willing to pay for it.
Yeah, no, yeah. And I guess there's one little later here that we'll get into. So yeah, in terms of real time. So the interesting thing for us, the real time, we're like, are these being shilled? But I was just like, if someone's shilling these, who is shilling them and why are they shilling them?
Exactly, yeah.
And like I didn't know of a good reason, like unless you thought that Court had hired someone to shill these, which we didn't think that he would do something like that. Like who would be shilling them? There are not that many out there, so like people looking to sell them, that seemed like far fetched because there's just so few of these. I mean, it's possible, but like seemed far fetched. And then the other thing we thought is that this is such a special auction, so much attention to it, that these are foreign bidders who just don't usually buy off eBay, who are coming in like wanting to participate in the auction, and so and it was different. It was some of the same accounts, but it was like different accounts too. It was like several different accounts. So unless someone was really systematically like had some shilling operation for some motivation that's unclear to us, that but even to this point, we're like, it's like these are strong sales, but they're not crazy. They were within the realm of reasonability, but then I think after Lewandowski, the next one was the one I think you mentioned, was the Modric.
Yeah,
that one was good. That was kind of high. Again, that one was pretty high even before final bidding started. But then I can't remember at what point all of a sudden it went up to like 7,000, and I was like, oh my gosh! I was like, this is crazy because like, where is it? I had bought this one like as a bin off eBay, I don't know, a few months ago, and it had been listed like bin at 4,000 and just sat there for like a week.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I got an offer for 3,400. I was contemplating buying it at 4,000 at the time. I was like, oh my gosh. But the sticking point with that one, it was a zero feedback seller from China. And so I think a lot of people were nervous about it. And I was like, oh my God, am I crazy to try to buy off a zero? I was like, it's eBay. eBay will protect me, whatever. I was like, I think I'm going to do it. And I even I messaged like Miles, LFC Gooner. I was like, am I crazy for this? And he's like, no, you got to take some risks sometimes if it's a good price. Like, I was like,
he always has such good advice too. Like I've messaged with him a few times. He has such good advice that it's just.
I was like, okay. And then I found, I did some like sleuthing work, and I found the seller on Instagram. I met, and I kind of like, I looked at his page, and he was like a legit collector. And I was like, now that I found him, on Instagram, I felt a little bit better about it. And I accepted the offer on eBay, so I didn't like want to cancel it and cause like shenanigans on eBay. But I like talked to him, and I think I even bought a gold De Bruyne off of him too. And he was like a legit guy, and so that worked out. So anyway, but I guess long story short, the reason maybe people didn't buy the other one, even though it was like at a decent price, was because it was a zero feedback bidder from China. So, as last to go down, this went up to 10,000, and I think I saw people posting stories like, oh my God, like some of the people, I think the ultimate bidders on it were not zero feedback bidders. I think I think there was one or zero feedback bidder at like 9,900, but like
that's right. Yep.
2 or 3 of the other people were not zero feedback bidders. I mean,
yeah, one person has, oh, that's weird. One person has 17 feedback, but 0% positive. That's shady. They're basically the one that like bid this up. The person was 17, and so like if you were gonna argue like, oh, this person doesn't have any positive feedback and they whatever, it's possible, but I don't know. I mean, if anything, it just means that whoever bought it probably paid more than they needed or should have, or you know what I mean, which sucks. But
that makes I mean, it's just
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it smells, and I agreed with people when we were like, oh god, this is just like, but it's just so weird. It's just like this set. I don't know whether people were just trolls or like people were just trying to inflate the set in general. Like I don't the motivation behind the shill. It's not clear to me. But yeah,
I mean, the only thing you could probably assume is like a couple things. Like either they have a red. You know, I saw there's like a 9 that sold last year for like 1,500 or so, or maybe they have, I don't know, maybe they have it raw, or maybe they just wanted the thrill of the thrill of the auction, right?
Yeah,
maybe they
card. For it. Yeah, one of the card they had deep pockets. So yeah, I don't know. It's like I don't know. You feel validated, but at the same time, if it's sketchy, I was like, in terms of like I thought my price was pretty strong. I paid, but like I'm not selling mine, even if I thought I could get 10K for it. But it was. I agree that people were right to be a little skeptical of it. It looks like it got paid for, so I don't know what that means at this point. But to be honest, but
means there was one person willing to pay $10,100 for it at least, I guess.
Yeah. So well, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see in the future. Like I doubt that if another one came up, whether it go for 10,000, but it's only a pop 2, and I have the other one, so mine's not going for sale. So people are gonna have to wait a while, I think, if they're gonna have a shot at a PSA 10. So we don't necessarily. They're not too. Some of the sales going forward were strong and whatnot. The only other one I thought that was like, I guess the two that were so the Neymar was interesting just in the sense that I didn't think the price was crazy on it. I think there were some 0 and 1 feedback bidders on it. It's the last comp on it, I think, was like 4,200. And I think it ended up going for 3,050, which, it's actually compared to the last comp. I mean, he's like arguably one of the top players in the set. It went for a very decent price.
Yeah.
But that being said, the buyer immediately put it on eBay as a bin for a bin price for 5,000.
Wow.
But looking at the feedback, the guy who won it in the auction is the person who put it.
Yeah.
So I guess it got paid for, but this was someone who thought the price was something he could
flip. Yeah.
Or she, I guess, could make money off of.
Sure.
And he actually, I put a follow on it, a like, and I got a $4,000 offer. So he's definitely looking
just looking. Yeah.
So,
interesting.
I've thought about putting in a counter offer of 3,050 to see if that's the comp. I don't know.
3,049. Yeah.
What you mean? Like, but yeah, clearly with fees, he'd probably want to get more than that. But
nice.
So that was interesting, but it meant that there were some flippers involved who thought they had room to maybe potentially flip these for a profit type of thing. But a lot of them were such strong prices. I doubt that there was much room to do that on. And the one, so yeah, this was like the conundrum. I really wanted this with all the shilling. I saw all the stuff going on with Modric. The Suarez was the last one that I really wanted and was really willing to pay strong for. And that one got bid up to 2,500. I think with 15 minutes left in the auction or something, leading up to the auction. And the two people who bid it up were 0 and 1 feedback bidders. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm willing to pay more than that. But I was like, I have my price that I'm willing to pay for it. I'm just going to put it in. If someone outbids me and they're like a shill person, I'll be okay with it. So yeah, I put in my my max, and I won it or whatever. And so it was, but that's the one I'm just like, oh God, maybe it is. But the thing is, it's a pop one. It's the only one graded by PSA at all. So, yeah. Who knows how long I would wait for this one? He's a popular player. So I think you and I were chatting. You're like, you always talk about being a maniac bidder. And I was like, yeah, damn right. I was like, let's go. I was like, lots of irrational thoughts when you really want a card like this. So, but anyway, that was my strategy. I was like, I knew what my top was. I just put it in. I was like, let the chips fall where they may. Price was maybe a little stronger than I thought it would go for. But yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was
so
Yeah.
So I guess like looking back on it now, what was like the total haul? Like how many did you end up with?
How many? So 16 the first night, and then ended up getting 9 the second night. So 25. So my goal of 20, I felt like I did a good job with that. And there was the straggler last night. The
yeah.
I don't know if you even noticed that one or not.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw it was up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I figured it was a foregone conclusion. So I was just
yeah, that was me. So 26 total haul from the court collection, if you will. So I was pretty happy with it. So about half. So I can't complain, and it was fun. It's stories to tell, and now we have this podcast to commemorate it, right?
Yeah. Well, and then don't forget there was the Messi $25,000 Messi a couple days ago too.
Oh yeah. So yeah. Also part of Court's collection, he had the 1010 red Messi, which was more than I was willing to spend for. Because I also don't collect the auto. The red Ronaldo was interesting to me. If that had been at a different time, I would have considered going in. It went for a decently strong price. I can't remember whether it was 13,000. I want to say it was something like that, in the 13,000 to 15,000 range, which is a decently strong price. But yeah, interesting one is he going to put up the red Mbappe, or whether he's holding that back,
or is that going to go to like Golden Elite or like one of those yeah. So it's interesting. I was looking because like one thing I did notice is after all these auctions came, it seems like other people who have reds are like, oh, this is the time. Because there's like a bunch on eBay now. There's I think there's like 5 or 6 at auction. Yeah. There was a Messi 8. PSA 8 sold. I think it was listed at $50K and it sold for like $25K.
Yeah, that one's like a knife in my heart, because I think it's the exact same one I saw at the National, and I was like, PSA 8, that may be in the range where I can buy it. Like there, he had a $40K price tag on it, and I think he was willing to come down to like 37, and I was like, I was like, if the 1010 auto is going for 30, I was like, you pay more for like an 8. Like I was like, it didn't make sense to me. Yeah. And I think I gave him a pretty strong offer. And 25K, I was like, that. Let me let him stew on this a while. Maybe like depending on what my situation is, like if I see him the following year at the National, I'll 25 was gonna be my max, I think. But I was gonna let him stew on it for a year. And the thing was, he wouldn't give me his contact information to even contact him between. And I was like, that's just weird. But yeah, it's like I didn't even know it was for sale. It was offered and sold before I even knew it was posted. And I was
I never even saw it. I think I saw it like as I was looking for like actual sales. Trying to see like, oh, what were the sales of these auctions? I was like, wait, a Messi sold. So it must have happened like in the middle of the night or something, like really fast.
Yeah, it was. I was because it's one I've been thinking about. I was like, if I see this again, like what's my plan on it? Like, and then seeing it's sold, I was just like, all my dreams like just crumbled away. So I'll have to wait for the next one. In a month or 10 years from now, we'll see.
Yeah. I guess on that note, so what you're probably at around like 30 or so, a little over 30 now in total, just if you have, or no, 35, 36?
39. And if you sell me
I'm trying to do all the math. If
you sell me Vasquez, I'll have 40.
Yeah. So you'll have 40. Yeah. That was funny too. Cause like, I guess for like a side note, like, well, as these auctions were going on, there was a Fran Vasquez on ComC for like 100. It was like just 113 or something like that. It was like reasonable.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was like not participating per se in these auctions, but I was like, well, if some of these go like really cheap, whatever. And I just assumed you were gonna like any of them that were that cheap. I'm like, oh, you'll get these. And I was like, I can grab this one off ComC. But then I also figured like, well, I kind of want to grab it just because like if for some reason you don't get it, then it's like. That'd be like kind of an annoying one to miss out on. And luckily I think we had the same, like,
it was my backup plan. I was like, I'll put in a, like 110 bid, like knowing that I can pick up this other one for me, it was like, I think it was $80. It was like 15% off. Did you end up paying 110 for it? Or did you?
I don't remember. I don't think
it was listed at 110 and then it was like 15% off for like 80 something. So that was the reason I I did a raw for $80. But anyway, that was my backup plan. I literally went straight to ComC and I was like, oh my God, some other lunatic was thinking the same thing I was, and of course it was you. I was like,
$85. Yeah. So yeah, it's all good. I'm happy to contribute to the cause.
But yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was fun chat. I was chatting with you. A couple other people were kind of like just curious what was going on. And so yeah, so my count up to 40. Not halfway yet, but farther along than I thought I would be. Essentially like 2 or 3 months into kind of like actually buying the set. So
well, I mean, and now too, like now that you have 40, it's like the chase is like very much on. Like when you had 6 or 10 or 13, it's like, okay, you're like making a dent. Now it's like, okay, no, this is like a thing. How do you like, given what we just went through, like there's this whole liquidation, these hardly ever come up. Like, how do you think about going forward in terms of like your mindset towards collecting the set? Because even with the golds, it's like, okay, these come up generally, most of them come up at least like once or twice a year, but the reds, it's kind of like, who knows? So like, how do you think about like trying to track these all down? And
I mean they'll trickle through. It's going to be like, for the ones that are really popular, like, if another Trent Alexander-Arnold comes up, if a Mo Salah, I know someone who does have a Mo Salah, but no, like if those come up, I know I'm going to be in for stiff competition. So like, I'm going to have to really like, be ready to go strong if I'm really going to go after him. So yeah, I mean, it's just, one comes up, I'll just have to kind of formulate a plan and figure out how strong I have to go. Some of them are going to go for more than I'm willing to pay. So I'm kind of at peace that like, I'm not going to win maybe every one. But I'm going to definitely put in strong bids for most of them to give it a shot. So I'm going to try not to be in a rush. I'm going to say like, this is like a 10-year project and make, draw it out more. So that'll be fun. And that was the thing with the gold is like, I only have 3 left now. So it's like, I was able to accomplish it in, most of it in a little over a year. And, I'll probably be able to finish it up, in the next, Mbappe may be a straggler for a while, but hopefully I'll be able to get the Seferovic and Firmino in the near future. But like, who knows with Firmino, you never know if it'll show up next week or in 2 years. So
yeah, and it's also kind of interesting that both of those were amongst the reds that came up for auction, but yet the golds are still elusive. And there was an orange Seferovic that I saw as well. So it's like his parallels are coming up, just not the one that counts right now.
The gold, which is just so random. So
that's funny. I guess maybe on that note, like I don't know if there's anything else that you want to share, any other thoughts or insights you had just on this experience.
No, I mean, I think I touched on most of it, but yeah, it's just, it was just really fun. I mean, this is kind of, I've kind of gone all in on this set, in the sense that like, I realized I like collecting the cards from this set more than any other set there is out there. So, that's kind of why I kind of, some people may think I'm a little crazy for going so strong on it, but it, I like it better than any modern product. And I think some other people are coming to that kind of conclusion too. You're like, why would I, pay way too much for 2022, 2023 Chrome when this like OG, like beautiful set is out there with amazing players in it. So I think people are slowly coming to that realization. But yeah, so that's my only like parting shot. I think competition's getting a little steeper for us in our chases.
I agree. Cool. Well, I guess on that note, we can leave it there and we'll pick up maybe the next time there's a bunch of that come up, or maybe when you finish the gold chase, we can reconnect again.
Yeah. And I'll be following your gold chase too. And I'm sure you'll get close to finishing it, and as time goes on.
Yeah, no, I'm just hoping that the Seferovic and Firmino come up soon so that I don't have to compete with you for when they do.
So yeah, hopefully we don't have to compete for any. So
yeah, cool. Well, thanks so much for joining. It was fun to kind of talk through it and hear things from your perspective. And I guess people can follow you on Instagram at MadCityCollector. Yeah. And thanks again, James, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for tolerating my our guest here.
All good. Yeah, no, the more the merrier. All right, take care. Bye. Bye.